Hello, hello, happy quarantine.
Get your volume up.
Mhm. All right, let's see here. Hi, guys. I'm waiting on Alex so we can start our interview. How's everyone doing? Staying strong. Hello,
Hey,
Alex. How's it going?
good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
I love
Technology.
that color on you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I have to
looks
pull it
really
together because it's quarantine.
nice.
How are you doing?
Good, good. It's so nice outside.
It is pretty outside today.
Very, very pretty. So we went for a long walk earlier today,
Oh,
which
nice.
was good.
Yeah, that is needed. I go to the park every once in a while just to like have a moment.
To
So,
your, yeah, have a moment to yourself, or just
mhm.
have a moment in the outside, fresh
Yeah,
air.
just to feel what it feels like to be outside.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we have a few viewers here, so I'm just gonna hop right in if we're ready to roll.
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, so for our few viewers that we do have, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us here today. We're taking a moment for mental health, and this is so important to me. So I'm so grateful to Alex for joining me today. And Alex is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and she's also the founder of Her Healing LA, which is a fabulous organization or company that we'll learn more about, I'm sure, very soon. So, for those of you who don't know, it is Mental Health Awareness Month. So, I just wanted to take a little time to learn more about mental health and to also just talk and share what you may know and share your knowledge with the community. So, yeah, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Before I start, I want to say so I have a dog and she has allergies. So
Oh,
if you hear a dog kind of making this like reverse sneeze sound, that's her.
oh, well, we're so
So,
love to your doggy. Oh.
um, well, thanks for introducing me. I'll tell you guys a little bit about Her Healing. So, Her Healing is a private practice that I have, and through Her Healing, we provide mental health services both for individual therapy, couples, family therapy, and that's in LA. And then we have a nonprofit called Her Healing Community. And through Her Healing Community, we provide school based counseling services in LA County. And then we also recently, this past October, so October 2019, started having bi monthly healing sessions. And so essentially, what that is we have different professionals come in with various different backgrounds and various healing modalities, such as like yoga therapy or sound bath or anything. We have someone recently that did a guided meditation, which was really nice. We have a couple different individuals coming up
Mhm.
that are talking more along the lines of nutrition.
Mhm.
So, so we the goal is to expose women to a range of different healing modalities because healing in general, whether it's like for mental health, physical, spiritual, it
Mhm.
is specific to the individual. So what works for me may not work for Nia.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal is to expose everyone to various different healing approaches, and that way you can find the approach that works best for you.
Mm-hmm.
So our sessions are free, and we work on donations. I have to throw that in there. We work on donations. So, but the goal is to create a level of exposure. So it is important that we provide them free.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing them in person, but we recently started doing them virtually with everything going on with COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that's a little bit about me. And I'm so excited to be here with you, Nia,
Thank you.
and have a conversation around mental health and what that looks like with, what we're all experiencing
Yeah,
now.
yeah, exactly. Well, I would like to say that, as you know, I've been to one of your sessions, and it was the sound bath. And I had never done a sound bath before, but I just left feeling amazing. It was a really awesome experience, and I appreciated, finding a new way of healing. You know,
Mhm.
um, it was great. And I that's something I never would have done just on a whim, like,
Yeah.
let me go check out a sound bath class or session. But now it's something that I know is there for,
Hmm.
my spiritual healing, and just to feel better inside. I think a lot of times we're running or going so much that, we just don't feel right or balanced. And I think that's kind of what happened for me during the sound bath, is everything just kind of came together and everything was
Hmm.
calm and cool, so that was an awesome experience. And yeah, everybody check out her healing. It already, so I know a little bit about it, but it already sounds like really amazing for someone who doesn't know. And the fact that it is free is major, because I think a lot of people don't try things because it's like, oh, well, it costs money, so they
Hmm.
don't have time to get to it. But I think when something is just offered to you, you feel more welcome to come in,
Yeah.
and explore.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that was one of the things I've one noticed for myself, but also noticed with like friends and family and then clients.
Mm-hmm.
I primarily work with women. So what I noticed was when I would recommend different things or say, hey, have you ever tried acupuncture? My clients were like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I've never tried that. It kind of seems really off-putting, but it's a form of healing, and
Yes.
it does amazing wonders for us physically, and emotionally.
Yeah.
So, it's something that we may not be too familiar with, as well as other non-traditional forms of healing.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think that being able to try it with a friend, or being able to try it in a group setting, opposed to you feeling like you have to go individually into this new space and try something that seems really, um, again, like non-traditional,
Mm-hmm.
or if it has some type of taboo around
Yeah,
it.
I was just thinking
Um,
like a little taboo.
yeah, it's from a different culture, so you're kind of like, oh, I've heard some stuff about that. Not sure
Mhm.
if that sits well with me. But the idea is there are so many different forms of healing, and when we think about just our mental health, it's connected to our emotional well-being. It's connected to our spiritual well-being. It's also so connected to our physical well-being.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we can tap into all of those different forms, and healing approaches around those different forms to help us mentally is huge. And if we can understand that they're all intertwined,
Yeah.
then we can also see that there's more than just going to individual therapy. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, individual therapy is great. I mean, I go, of course, I'm a therapist, but it's, sometimes it's not for everyone. And sometimes
Yeah.
you can try a different approach first that then will lead you back to going to individual therapy because you're more open
Mm-hmm.
to it at that time.
Yeah. And I definitely wanted to talk a little bit more about that. Like, what are the options of someone who may feel like, okay, well, therapy isn't necessarily the thing that I need right now, but I need something. I need something to pull it all together, and, clarify these thoughts or these things that are going on in my mind, whatever it may be, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say? I know that you offer a lot through her healing of those other options, but maybe what are things that you found for yourself, or maybe that you've suggested to your clients that have really helped them to kind of find their balance and kind of their inner peace, even?
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that I think is really helpful is meditation. Just creating that space where
Mm-hmm.
you can be alone, that space where you're able to focus on your inner thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But not in the sense where, of course, if our inner thoughts are things that are, negative or that seem really harmful, or thoughts that we're having that, kind of evoke a sense of fear for us, the idea of sitting with them is really kind of scary.
Yeah.
So doing like a guided meditation is enough. It's not like you're sitting in silence, but there's, another voice that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of sit in this space and hear another voice and be, slightly distracted from
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts, but also learning how to sit with them and sit with the discomfort.
Yeah.
A really great app that I recommend to everyone is the Calm app. I don't know if you've tried it,
Mm-hmm.
but I love it. For me right now, I've been doing a lot of meditation. I'm pregnant, so
Yay.
I so I'm
We're
due in
going
a
to tell
couple
Alex
weeks.
congrats.
I'm due in a couple weeks, so I've really been focusing on meditation, just trying to create that mental space that is a calm space, one that allows me to tap into my inner self and physically relax, but those negative voices. So I would say for sure the Calm app, trying some type of guided meditation is
Mm-hmm.
really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, of course, with everything going on right now, it's a little bit hard to find like group therapy
Yeah.
experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I have referred different people to various groups in LA County. You can find groups the same way you can find individual therapists. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're interested in finding more of a group, then a really great website that I know for sure provides information in regards to therapists all across the United States is psychologytoday.com.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use that as a resource if you're looking for an individual therapist, but you can also use it as a resource if you're looking for group therapy. And so sometimes a group therapy approach, is a little bit more, it's less intimidating for
Right.
some.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also it just it helps you to not isolate, because I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times when people are going through, whatever it is, even if it's not some major mental illness, or,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just a little anxiety, knowing that someone else does experience this, and they have the just the kind of same issues that you have.
Yeah.
Because I think when we have issues, we feel like we don't share them with anyone. They're ours, and we are the
Mm-hmm.
only person in the world that deals with this. So I think being in a group kind of helps to break that down,
Yeah.
and you find kind of like-minded people in the way of knowing how to work through a moment, or
Yeah.
knowing what does work for you, or just having someone to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, group sessions, I think, are a big part of just
Yeah.
your journey and kind of your spiritual well being, even.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I agree. I always have a conversation with my clients around spirituality in general. And
Mm-hmm.
so what does that look like for you, right? Maybe your spirituality is Christian, maybe it's, you're a Buddhist, maybe you're Muslim. There's so many different types of spirituality. And so definitely even tapping into that, of course that looks different now because it's, can't be in person. But there are for sure ways to tap into various spiritual groups that also will help to give you a sense of like, grounding,
Mm-hmm.
a sense of faith, a sense of community. And sometimes that's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of times when we go through challenges, whether it be like traumatic experiences or loss or anxiety or depression, we actually tend to isolate,
Yeah.
um, which is the opposite of what we need to be doing.
Right.
And so, not a bad thing at all, right? Because in reality, like we're responding to what we feel like we need in that moment. And so
Mm-hmm.
isolation, feeling like no one understands what I'm going through is a natural response.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes we kind of pull away from the spirituality that grounded us, or that sense of um,
Mm-hmm.
those teachings that gave us some sense of faith, or this idea that it's bigger than us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we are in this, but
Yeah.
it's bigger than our individual experience.
Right.
So sometimes that's helpful too, just to remind ourselves, well, okay, I have distanced myself
Mm-hmm.
from a sense of community, or I've distanced myself from my spirituality. And
Mm-hmm.
so even tapping into that can also be helpful.
Yeah. And I think, that's what so many of us have done, especially, everybody talks about it, but social media has really changed the way we go about our lives. So I think it's easier for us to distance ourselves because we feel as if we're connected to people because
Yeah.
it's just kind of immediate. I can text you, I can call you, I can FaceTime you, I can do all of those things in an instant. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of keeps us from actually engaging in a way where we have a physical encounter with someone. We sit in the same space with them and we get to look in their actual eyes. And, I think that's something that we miss, but we don't
Mm-hmm.
realize how much we're missing out on with not having that sort of engagement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Even working with kids, it's really evident how their ability to connect socially
Mm,
is so different than like when we grew up, right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, you went to like everything was like in person. Everything was so we connected emotionally with each other, sometimes like too emotionally with like your friend groups.
Yeah.
But it's so different now because they say whatever they want. Because it's all kind of there's a level of distance because you're saying it via a text or you're saying it on social media.
Yeah.
So you're kind of removed from how it impacts the other person.
Mm,
Um, Also, just when you're in person with someone, then it's almost like this social awkwardness, right? There's this level of
yeah.
social anxiety. Like, what do I say? How
Mhm.
do I communicate with someone? How do I even make friends? Like how do I meet new people and make new friends?
Yeah.
Because we're removed from that. My friend is someone that I know on social media and I follow them and I know everything that's going on in their life, and then we're
Right.
friends,
Right.
as opposed to me actually having a deeper relationship with that person.
Mhm.
So it's very different.
Mhm.
But I would say that's one of the reasons why I think therapy is so important,
Mhm.
because it essentially is us relearning how to have that type of deeper level connection with someone,
Mhm.
how to be able to talk openly about our feelings and our experience, and, actually like live that truth
Mhm.
and do it in a space where someone is open,
Yeah.
someone's non-judgmental, someone can hold space for whatever we're feeling.
Mhm.
It's a different level of healing and a different level of connecting to be able to do that with someone who essentially starts off as a stranger, and
Mhm.
then yet we form this like really, you know, great connection with that
Yeah,
person.
totally. I have no I don't know, no worry about saying that I am definitely an advocate for therapy. I believe therapy should be like mandated. Feel like it's necessary for everyone. I always say no one can go throughout their life without some form of therapy. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So, I mean, some form of trauma, sorry. So I'm reading. Hi, Kiana. I'm reading the word therapy is such a blessing, so I said therapy. But we can't go throughout our life without some form of trauma, you know? So I'm just like, why isn't therapy mandated? Everyone needs it, you know?
Yeah.
But now I've lost track because I was reading therapy. But anyway, yeah, I do. Oh, I had a therapist while I was in Atlanta while we were transitioning from New York to LA. And so I only saw her for like 4 months, but I feel like she like changed my life. You
Mm.
know, I feel as if I had a spiritual awakening during our work that we did together, and I didn't realize how just how life changing it could be. I always believed in it. My
Mm-hmm.
mom does therapy, so it's something that was always around. But just to get to experience it, and especially on that level, I'm like, yes, everyone must go. It's like a secret, you know, that only certain people know about because only certain people are courageous enough to go after, you know, a clear mind, a better life, living more
Mm-hmm.
viably, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is that we're striving for. It takes a lot of courage to be willing to talk
Yeah, it
to a
does.
stranger and, you know, just lay it all out there, and
Mm-hmm.
to be able to listen, you know, and take that
Yeah,
information in. The whole thing is a process,
it
you know.
is. Yeah. No, it takes a lot of courage. There was one thing, I wanted to comment on something that you said a little bit earlier. Um, but I was vibing with everything you were saying. And so by the time you finished, I was like, dang, what was I gonna say? So it might come back to me. But no, it is a process. You know, one of the things that I think there's some misconceptions about therapy. There are a lot of misconceptions about
Mhm,
therapy. Let's just say that honestly. But there are a lot of people who think it's someone telling you what to do. You
mhm,
know, it's like, oh, if I go to therapy, like someone's gonna tell me what to do. I don't need someone to tell me what to do. Like I know what to do.
mhm.
And that's not therapy, you know? Like I think
Right.
that's for sure a big misconception that we have. And for those of us who, you know, grew up in in black church, you know,
Mhm.
we
Amen.
definitely have heard like you don't need that, you know, you don't need to go to therapy, you just need to pray about it, right? Because God's going to give you guidance on what to do next. You know,
Mhm.
he's the one that's going to give you faith to go through this difficult experience. And that
Right.
is true, right? Like
Mhm.
um that's not irrelevant. It's so important, that spiritual practice that we have. However, you know, it's almost like if you sprained your ankle or broke your knee, right? Like you there's
Right.
obviously something wrong, and so you want to go to a specialist to figure
Right.
out, well, what should I do, you know? And
Mhm.
whether or not you take their advice is up to them or
Mhm.
up to you, but the reality is you're going to get information to figure out, well, what's going on with this area. Well, it's
Yeah.
the same if you're experiencing something mentally or emotionally, right? Which we
Mhm.
all do. We all have experienced some form of like a traumatic event in our lives,
Mhm.
regardless if it's like a minor traumatic event or like a big traumatic event. We all have experienced something.
Yeah.
So with that experience, you know, you would want to go to someone
Mhm.
who specializes in mental health, right? Just so
Mhm.
that you can learn more about what you're experiencing, or you can learn more about, you know, what you can do. You can get tools and resources to be able to help yourself,
Mhm.
not just stay where you are,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So you know, therapy is really just that. It's going to a space where you can learn more about what you're experiencing. You can learn more about yourself. You can share, you know, those
Mhm.
inner like feelings and thoughts and experiences that you've never shared with anyone before
Yeah.
because of a fear or because you don't feel safe, right?
Mhm.
So it's being able to do that and then learn tools to manage it, you
Mhm.
know, learn tools to help yourself. So it's not at all someone telling you what to do. It's really going to a safe space so you can learn and gain more insight into yourself.
Totally. And who wouldn't want to do that? You know, when you say it like that, I would be like, sign me up. I'm there, you know. I want to know more about myself because I'm trying to do some things here in this life, you know. So
Right?
if I can figure me out, then let's do this. I'm totally on board, you know. But it is sometimes a fear of you may not want to know what you're about to find out
Yeah.
about yourself, you know, and I've experienced that as well. You know, I think we all have things that we kind of hide and then we kind of push off that we know
Mm-hmm.
we could kind of fix or adjust or
Mm-hmm.
maybe even monitor, you know. But yeah, I think the fear does keep us away, but it's so life changing. Like I keep
Mm-hmm.
saying, you know. So we're totally like talking about so many things, and we're not at all talking about what we were gonna talk about, but this has been a good combo thus far. So let's talk about, I know that your focus is heart healing. So can we talk a little bit about women and mental health and just, I don't know, what it means to kind of have an experience as in mental health as a woman. I don't know if there would be, you know, a difference between men and women. Is there, are there different symptoms? Are there different approaches? You know, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just talk like women and mental health for a second.
Mm-hmm. So, well, when you say approaches,
Mhm.
you mean like approaches to healing, like different healing approaches?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are not. I would say that. So even though I have primarily women in my practice that I work with, I do work with men as well,
Hmm.
and I use the same approaches with them
Hmm.
because we're all human and
Right.
we all have maybe different experiences, but we may have different experiences but respond similarly to them
Hmm.
or have the same experiences and respond different to them, regardless if we're male or female.
Hmm.
Um, so, um, so in terms of like approaches, there aren't very many differences in terms of how I approach healing.
Hmm.
But I will say that, um, as far as women go, the way in which we communicate and express ourselves a lot of times looks different than the way
Hmm.
that men communicate and express themselves.
Hmm.
I'm not going to go to the extent to say that it is always different because there are always outliers.
Hmm.
Uh, and we think about how we come up with our personality and who we are. We're a result of um, our past experiences,
Hmm.
right? So whether we are male or female, our past experiences impact us more and have more of a distinct imprint on how we operate in our lives, how we view ourselves, and how we handle relationships.
Hmm.
So it's not so much of our sex; it's more or less our experiences.
Hmm.
Um, so for me, the reason why I really wanted to work with women is I am a woman myself. So for me, I kind of feel like it's easier for me to relate
Hmm.
because I have, similar experiences to what women have.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, I started off working with um, girls. So
Hmm.
I worked with girls in South LA who had experienced trauma, so
Hmm.
various forms of family trauma, sexual trauma, and so that was really what um, men experience sexual trauma as well, and trauma in general. We hear a lot more about women and girls who have experienced sexual trauma, and so that was my experience. I was working with a lot of women
Hmm.
and then going from that, working at UCLA at their rape treatment center, working with women primarily,
Hmm.
girls, but more along the lines of like adults,
Hmm.
women in college who experience sexual abuse or sexual assault. So trauma was really kind of where my path took me, and
Hmm.
so specializing in women and their experiences, and including, any type of like sexual trauma,
Mhm.
was kind of where I landed.
Yeah.
Um, so there are for sure differences in how we as women communicate and express ourselves,
Mhm.
and the roles that we play in society,
Right. Yeah.
right? So, I mean, I'm not sure if Taraji P. Henson talks a lot about this, that she recently started a foundation
Mhm.
for mental health, but she speaks a lot about, just from her experience and from a lot of other, women of color, their experiences too, where we feel the need to be strong. And so it's this idea that, like, I am I'm a strong Black woman,
Mhm.
right? So holding on to this idea of like being strong means that I don't show any weakness,
Mhm.
right? So I don't, I'm not, sometimes that means I'm not vulnerable in situations with others.
Mhm.
Sometimes that means I never let my guard down. My guard always stays up. Sometimes that means that if I'm feeling something, I don't really express what I'm feeling, because being emotional is not a positive.
Mhm.
It's looked at as a sign of weakness. So if we carry that with us,
Yeah.
then that truly impacts our mental health, right?
Mhm.
And that's not only something that it's not like we as women of color decided this is who we're going to be.
Right.
That goes all the way back, like generation, right? I mean, it goes
Mhm.
back to even how we're viewed in society in America, that, we don't, we, when things happen to us,
Mhm.
we are strong. And so it actually doesn't impact us the way that it impacts other women,
Right. Yeah.
white women,
Mhm.
even with regards to abuse, right?
Mhm.
So um, we are women who don't hurt, essentially.
Mm. And
So
you
that
said it
whole
like that.
idea,
That hurts
yeah,
for you.
it it,
You
it
know.
does. It
Yeah.
does hurt. So it's I think for sure that our ancestors' experiences
Mhm.
have generationally impacted us in the way that we view emotions, the way that we view feelings, because it wasn't safe to express emotions. It wasn't safe to express our feelings or be weak. We had to be
Mhm.
strong. And
Mhm.
so that has been passed on. I mean, that's something I learned from my own mother, right? I can only remember seeing her cry once in my entire life.
Mm, wow.
And that was when my grandmother died. And
Mm.
I didn't even see her cry, right? She wouldn't even cry in front of my face. She
Mhm.
cried in private, and I just heard her cry. So this idea that she's strong is an amazing thing, right? And I
Mhm.
don't want to
Mhm.
diminish being strong, but
Mhm.
it's also like, well, you can be strong and also have emotions, right? You
Right.
can be strong and also be broken or hurt. You
Mhm.
can be strong and also need help and support.
Yeah, because being vulnerable doesn't take away your strength. You have to be strong to be vulnerable. So you can still be strong and get help and go to a group or go to
Yeah.
therapy or go to a healing experience, or
Hmm.
event or whatever it may be, where you get your healing, church, where but yeah, I think that's just important that we know that it still takes strength to do that as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say other cultures have been doing that. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's challenging for African Americans because we were taken from our culture, right? And then brought to America, then stripped from, our natural ways of healing in Africa. And so then now it's like, okay, well, everything is taboo for us, right? Like going to yoga was, what is that? That doesn't necessarily align
Yeah.
with Christianity. So, I mean, I can't try that, because, someone thinks that that's a negative thing to do, or trying acupuncture with us negative, and meditation. Well, now you're meditating on something that's not prayer. So what is
Right.
that? So there's so many, like, there's a lot of stigma around other forms of healing.
Mm-hmm.
And if we just look at other women in America, they try other forms of healing,
Yeah.
right? They're a lot more open to it, and they have been doing these other modalities, whether it be acupuncture or yoga or therapy for
Hmm.
years. And so we haven't.
Yeah.
So, one of the big things for me in terms of starting her healing community and having these, bi-monthly healing sessions was really to say, look, you may have some stigma around it, but you can also try it in a safe space. And if you
Hmm.
try it and you like it, or you realize, wow, this really did something to me.
Hmm.
I did a sound bath and I felt something release that I had been holding on to.
Hmm.
Or I did a yoga session and I felt, my pelvic area release tension that I've been holding on to for years.
Hmm.
Then it's like, okay, maybe this is something that does work for me and I can feel a little more like um, it's something I feel confident in continuing to
Right.
explore for
Yeah.
me.
Hmm. And the thing about that is too that even if it doesn't, because I'm somebody that I know I need yoga. I don't love it to death. I'm trying to get some help with that, but I I know that it's something that I need, but it's so hard to get myself to a place where I'm doing it consistently. And I think that's something that we do. We kind of forebode what feeling better, or we forebode joy, or whatever it is. We kind of we know that something could make us feel better potentially, but it's just like, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ready for that yet, or I'm not, it's kind of like we fight the feeling better.
Yeah.
But that's why, groups and something like her healing, I think, is so important, because it welcomes everyone in, and it's just, like, come in and try it, no pressure, and just see if it works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
that's something that we should do, with therapy as well. Just like try it, see if it works. It doesn't have to work for you. Maybe it won't. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's, one of the points you're making, is that maybe that's not completely your answer, but there are things out there that you can go to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you touched on yoga, which is very physical, right? Because
Hmm.
we hold emotions in our bodies physically.
Hmm.
A lot of times, even when we think that we, if, for instance, I'll just use my own personal example with grief and loss.
Hmm.
So, um, I thought for years that I had grieved and kind of gone through the healing process of losing my grandmother, but I hadn't. I had really kept a lot of it suppressed,
Hmm.
hadn't talked about it. There was not anyone for me to really talk to about it, or so I thought. Hadn't gone to therapy about it. And so what I noticed though was I was carrying it here in my shoulders and in my back, and I had been carrying it
Hmm.
there for years. I tried yoga, and when I first went, I was like, this isn't really for me. I'm like sweaty and everything. I'm the only Black person here in my class. I was living in San Diego at the time, and I just felt like this isn't for me.
Hmm.
But I kept going because after I would leave a class, I would feel better,
Yeah.
and I couldn't really explain what that was, but I knew that I felt better. So, after a while of going and doing different poses, I realized there was one class I went to, we did a lot of like back release poses, and I released the tension in my
Hmm.
shoulders and literally cried in the
Hmm.
class. And so for me, it was like, wow, I hadn't been doing anything physically for my body to release,
Oh,
what was being stored. I
hmm.
was exercising, I was running, I was doing lifting weights, all that. But
But to
that's just
actually
like
have
keeping,
a release.
yeah, like that's just like coping with what's going on in the
Hmm.
moment. That's not really relaxation and releasing,
Hmm.
right? That's our body needs to release. And if we're not expressing our emotions verbally or getting it out in that way, our body holds it. So for you, you're a dancer,
Hmm.
right? You are constantly expressing yourself and releasing different things, and that is a huge coping tool for you. So
Hmm.
even though it's not yoga, right? It's
Hmm.
still a beautiful form of healing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, almost every time I go to class, I'm like trying to hide that I'm crying because it is such a relief. And I always think about, I've been dancing since I was 2 years old, but I always think about people that aren't physical and what their body may feel like if they have no way of releasing,
Yeah.
because even I hold tension. That's literally where I hold my tension. Right through
Stress,
here,
tension,
right?
everything.
Yeah, and it's just, I'm just tight. Um, but for people who aren't necessarily body aware, I just wonder, like, how do you get that release,
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that you say kind of like the working out and the running and everything, that was coping because you weren't really giving yourself a chance to like
Yeah.
just slow down, have some peace and calm,
Mm-hmm.
and just really have processing time.
Right.
So that's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I've never thought about it like that, and I guess that speaks to, of course, balance. That I think that's something that we're learning while we are all at home and, everybody's working from home or going out once a week. It's kind of trying to find a balance of, okay, I can be
Yeah.
productive, but I can also give myself time to like not think about anything
Mm-hmm.
and actually enjoy Netflix and, you know, take a walk or
Yeah.
just go to the park and, whatever it is, we do need to give our body a release.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, to tag on to what you're saying, I really think of healing and self-care as a cocktail. Like you have to pull from a couple different areas. It's not just one thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if working out for you, maybe lifting weights is like a thing for you, right? That really helps you to distract yourself mentally or kind of exert, this energy from a long day. Or if you're
Mm-hmm.
going through something difficult, you feel like, okay, this helps me. Well, that's one thing, right? But you have to think of your body as it's connected
Yeah.
to you mentally. It's also connected to you emotionally and spiritually. It's all connected. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing one thing for yourself physically, what else are you doing that's catering to the other aspects
Right.
of your body, right? The other aspects of health for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So are you going to therapy? Even if it's not a trauma that you're going to process, just having that space where
Right.
you're like an hour a week or an hour every other week, I have that space for me. And
Yeah.
I'm shutting off everything else and, what my kids are doing, what my husband's doing, or my partner. I'm just focusing on me.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever I want to talk about in that hour is for me. And
Yeah.
so that's you focusing on whether that's like the emotional or the mental piece. But
Mm-hmm.
now you're thinking about like, okay, I have this that I'm doing for me, or I have dance that I also do for me because that gives me so much joy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that helps with me emotionally. So I have this, working out, lifting weights, I have therapy, I have dance that I do.
Yeah.
I have,
The
spending
cocktail.
time with my family that I do. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a it's
I
a
love
number
that.
of different things, right?
Uh-huh.
It's not just like this one answer solution for the rest of your
Mhm.
life. Like you have to be thinking about it as like it's more than just that.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Give me a cocktail. I love thinking about it, like that. Like, okay, I'm gonna put this in and
Hmm.
this mixture is gonna make everything taste really good, you know.
Yeah.
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 To kind of go back to what we were speaking to, I always tell my dancers, like, you have to connect your brain to your body because that's something
Yeah.
that, as dancers, they look down as they're learning. And I'm like, your brain is up here, like you don't look down to have to make sure that your brain is telling your feet what to do.
Hmm.
The knowledge and the work and the processing is here,
Hmm.
but I think we don't often connect our body to our brain. We think of them as
Yeah.
two separate things, and they're just not. So our brain has to be healthy as well as the body,
Hmm.
but we don't think about our brain being healthy. and what that
No.
means for your brain to be healthy.
No, no. I mean, and I also think that when we hear the words mental health,
Mm-hmm.
we think automatically like a disorder, right? It's like
Right.
mental health, so that is a disorder, and it's like no, it's just like physical health, right? I mean, what do?
Yeah.
You're told to exercise, right, to maintain your cardiovascular health. You're
Mm-hmm.
told to eat healthy, right? To
Mm-hmm.
eat veggies and not eat just only fats or fast food or processed foods. So we learn these things early on about our physical health, right, and how to maintain it. And we hopefully with that information you know, we can make informed decisions that are best for us.
Yeah.
But we don't really learn the same tools at an early age on how to maintain our mental health,
Mm-mm.
right?
Or do
So
we learn
then,
them at all, you know?
no, no one talks about it, right? There's so much stigma around it. No one talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
So then, we live in a society where everything is go, go, go. Everything is like, you're only the idea that you deserve to live um, a successful life, right? Or happy life
Mm-hmm.
means that you have to slave for it, right? You have to work, hours on end. You have to never pause or give yourself a break, right? You don't take
Mm-hmm.
vacations. You have to keep working.
Yeah.
So this idea that like stress is something that will never go away, and the
Mm-hmm.
more stress we put on ourselves, then the more successful we will be. So we are brought up in this society where we don't learn tools to take care of our mental health, or that that's even important in comparison to our
Mm-hmm.
physical. And then we're taught that we just push our brain and our, emotions, and to the point where we exhaust it. So
Mm-hmm.
then we experience like extreme anxiety, or we experience depression,
Right.
right? And sadness and anxiety are both very natural emotions for us to have. We all have them.
Mm-hmm.
But when we push ourselves so hard without giving ourselves the mental health that we need, taking
Mm-hmm.
care of our mental health,
Mm-hmm.
then we experience, actual disorders, right?
Yeah.
Where we've reached this point where we've exhausted our brain and our mind.
Mm-hmm. That is so funny that you said that. We're totally on the same page because I was just about to ask about anxiety and depression. And if we can just talk a little bit about how common it is,
Mm-hmm.
that would be great to discuss. What it maybe feels like to be anxious, what it feels like to be depressed. Because I think a big misconception that people have about depression is that you're always like really low and you
Mm-hmm.
can't make it out the bed and you have no ambition. But depression can also manifest itself in like you're doing everything,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you're just going, 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 and you're avoiding or whatever it may be. It can, they look different ways on different people at different
Yeah.
times, that, you know. So just a little bit about anxiety and depression.
Yeah, well, so the first thing I always do with clients is normalize anxiety. It
Mm-hmm.
is so natural, right? If we
Mm-hmm.
just think about feelings, there are some feelings that we think of as being negative, and there are feelings that we think of as being positive,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in our culture, we are taught that, like, oh, happiness, joy, excitement, those are positive emotions, love. But, if you feel anger or sadness or resentment or frustration, like those are negative emotions and feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But there are no negative and there are no positive, right? They all are a range of emotions that we as humans feel. We
Mm-hmm.
all have them, in different cultures, we call them different things, different names. We describe them differently, but we all experience a range of emotions. And so it's very normal and natural to have those emotions. But growing up, you know, whether we grew up in a home where they normalized those emotions or they talked about them openly,
Mhm.
really helps us as we grow as adults to do the same thing or to understand what emotions are appropriate and not appropriate,
Right.
right? So I expressed a little bit earlier for those who have recently joined the live is that sadness was not something that was okay to discuss. Now, anger was definitely something that was discussed. You know,
Mhm.
I saw that being expressed, but sadness was not an emotion that was expressed.
Mhm.
So growing up, for me, I was kind of taught to feel like, okay, I may feel sad about something, but I have to deal with that on my own. That's
Mhm.
not something I can express and share, right?
Oh, yeah.
So therefore, this sadness is really what I'm feeling on the inside. But
Mhm.
how do I express that sadness? Well, it comes out as like anger, or it comes out as like lashing out, you know, or like rage, because the real feeling that I'm having underneath is not a feeling that I've ever like been taught or that's ever been normalized or that's ever been okay to express.
Mhm.
So what that could look like in someone else is therefore you're holding on to this sadness, right? Which morphs into this depression, right? So sadness is normal. It's a feeling that we all have, but now it's something that I'm holding on to and I'm not letting out, right? I'm letting it out as anger, but anger is not really what I'm feeling. So I'm
Right.
holding on to this like sadness that no one understands, that I feel like I can't express to someone else, that I
Mhm.
can't really put words to. And then, you know, how does that impact my body? Because my
Yeah.
body's holding on to this sadness now,
Mhm.
right? How does it impact me mentally?
Right.
So we just, I mean, it is all very natural, right? These emotions that we have are natural emotions. We're just not taught to normalize them and accept them and feel them and express them. So
Yeah.
we cover them with something else.
Mhm.
And it's both on anxiety with anxiety and depression.
Mhm.
You know, depression is again underneath that is that sadness, right? That was just we never expressed or we didn't know how to process and deal with. So then it morphs into this, you know, long standing or more intense version of
Mhm.
sadness, which we call depression. And it impacts us
Yeah.
totally differently.
Yeah. You got me like over here, like, yes. Like I was just listening to a sermon for a second. I have nothing to say. Actually, a friend of mine says I like that. I like the normalizing your depression and your emotions. She likes that you didn't identify the emotions as negative or positive, which I thought was awesome too. I've never heard that before,
Yeah.
because they are characterized as such. So, yeah, I think that's a really big thing to hear. I think she asked, okay, this, I'm going totally back, way back. But there was also a question about the name of yoga that you were doing do you remember what it was, what type of yoga it was when you got that release?
I was doing hot yoga.
Ooh.
So it was yeah, the Bikram hot yoga. And girl, when you try that, it's
Oh,
not something that you like the first time. It's like, woo, this is not something that is for me. I
yeah.
couldn't breathe. Like so, but oddly enough, you know, there's a
Mhm.
part of it that still feels good. Like it feels like you just went through something that you don't want to go through again. But then
Yeah.
there's a part that feels good.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was the yoga that I was
Okay.
doing at the time.
I tried Bikram, and I'm one of those people who can go back after a few times. I was like, I am not gonna make it through. I'm not strong enough.
You gotta try it a couple times, right? You can't just try it one time, you have to try it a couple times.
Woo! I'll go back.
Um, but yeah, so that was it. But really, you know, there are so many forms of yoga.
Yeah.
It really just, I mean, yoga is great because not only is it like a physical, you're moving your body, you're being really in tune with your experience.
Mhm.
It's also very like meditative.
Mhm.
So there's a number of different benefits, whether it's like the physical, the emotional, the mental, all of that is kind of combined when you do yoga.
Mhm.
That you can totally get by doing other forms of yoga or dance, other forms of physical
Right.
movement. and
Yeah.
tying in some other cocktail pieces there.
Mhm.
Um, but that's one that I think is really, really great.
Mhm. I
Um,
a friend of mine, we recently, she's kind of been, like I said, I'm getting my help on getting into yoga. So I may say this wrong, but she mentioned Ashtanga
mhm,
yoga to me. And because I'm someone who likes more of regimented type, I want to go in and like I don't know if I'm coping. I have to think about that, figure that out. But when I'm working out, I kind of like to hit it hard and, feel like somebody's beating me up, and then I feel
mhm,
super amazing after.
mhm,
Um, so she was just saying that it's a little more for a person who's like, let's hit it, let's do this, let's keep it going, let's keep this kind of regimented, which I kind of thought that all yoga was like that, but maybe it's a little more, um, like this is what you do after this pose and this pose is this. But
yeah,
I do think that we have to just, again, we've talked about it, but just try different things to help us. And especially along with anxiety and depression, probably the one thing we need is to calm our bodies down and to get a release,
mhm,
but like you said, we kind of keep those things in, and we don't even realize that we're holding emotions. You
mhm,
may feel like a pain behind your neck and not realize that that was a fight you had with your
right,
mom or sister 10 years ago, or a loss, or whatever it may be. We can hold emotions in our physical body.
mhm. Yeah. No, we do, right? Our
Mm-hmm.
emotions are physical.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that, we talked about, just what are we taught about mental health and how to
Mm-hmm.
maintain that. And we're not taught that in school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's one of the things that we teach in the school-based counseling program.
Mm-hmm.
To the middle school that we work with, is really, what is emotion? Like, what is an emotion?
Mm-hmm.
How do we process that? How do we communicate our feelings and emotions? Because
Mm-hmm.
they do reside physically, all of them do. And so it's almost like sometimes that's a sign for us what we're really feeling, because we
Mm-hmm.
feel it internally first.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, but I wanted to touch on anxiety, because that's a big one that's really physical. I always give this example of, well, not, I don't always give the example myself, but I always ask the question of, like, do you ever remember being in grade school and having to present, or like read something in front of the class, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe you had like a grade school play that you did, right? Or maybe for you, dance, right? So maybe your
Mm-hmm.
like first performance or every performance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do you ever feel nervous, or some
Mm-hmm.
sense of like, and I don't always mention anxiety, but this sense of like nervousness, what
Yeah.
does that feel like? Do you get
Mm-hmm.
butterflies, Nia? Like, what's that like for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had a
Um,
total anxiety attack actually the first time that I was on a competition dance team and they brought me in. I did an audition for it, and I had to learn like all the dances in a weekend, and I was a total mess. The morning I woke up, it was a moment. But I was able to make it through, but I remember I was like 10 or 11 when that
mm,
happened.
yeah,
And in hindsight, I'm like, I had a full out anxiety attack.
you were nervous, right?
Yeah.
And that nervousness, yes, that nervousness is a form of anxiety. So
Mm-hmm.
you felt that at a very early age, and we all have that
Mm-hmm.
level of nervousness or anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I can think about, like, for me, I get really bad test anxiety, which I'm so happy I'm not in school anymore. But I
Mm-hmm.
would get it, where it would be so to the point where sometimes I'd forget things,
Yeah.
or I would, start to breathe really heavily, right? Or not have a hard time catching my breath, or I'd start to sweat or feel lightheaded.
Mm-hmm.
And the anxiety leading up to the test, I knew that, I was nervous.
Mm-hmm.
That pushed me to study, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
anxiety is what pushed me to be like, okay, I really need to study for this, because I'm feeling real nervous about this, having some anxiety, and I want to do well. So I'm
Uh-huh.
going to study until I feel comfortable, or like more grounded in the information and the knowledge. So the
Mm-hmm.
anxiety would still come from me while I was testing,
Mm-hmm.
but that initial nervousness and anxiety was actually helpful, So there's a level of anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and nervousness that's helpful for us,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not a negative thing, it's actually beneficial. But
Right.
it's when we don't know how to cope with it, we don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to recognize the signs when it
Mm-hmm.
starts to come on for us physically, that then it kind of exacerbates, right? So
Right.
it gets to a point where it's out of control.
Right.
Or if we are doing a lot of things that cause us to feel this anxiety and nervousness and stress, and
Mm-hmm.
we start to feel it a lot and we're not processing it, we're not releasing